time for questions, but we do like to record this. This is then available for all of our staff, and I know people like to dip in when they've got a bit of time just to see what progress is being made. So if we move on to the first slide, please. Thank you. It's a bit slow today. It's because it's Thursday, you see. It's been a long week. So colleagues will be really aware of our purpose pyramid and our strategic direction. And so what we've really got in the trust is from frontline service delivery right the way through to the exec and the board, a really clear alignment of the things that we want to drive improvement on. And clearly that is generated by all of you. You've got such fantastic knowledge and expertise and such great commitment to improve services, and that's been reflected in our verbal feedback from our latest CQC report, which was terrific. Now this is going to get updated and put around the hospital as we develop some of our thinking, but it hasn't really changed very much, which is really good, because it means when we did this as a sort of bigger exercise, we absolutely got it right in terms of our priorities and our breakout objectives. Next slide, please. Great. So really what we're trying to do is combine your knowledge, expertise, commitment and enthusiasm with some core principles of improvement methodology. They absolutely align with the values of the trust and the values of you as people who work in our great service. And that is fundamentally about respect for staff, valuing the person we care for, that's really at the centre, and how we work together across teams, not just individually, to drive improvements. And this is really about sharing the learning, being curious and celebrating everything that improves. But also when some of the changes don't quite work, the richness of the learning there is great. Next slide, please. So we've got our 5 pillars of people first improvement practice, and colleagues will be really, really aware of those. From my non-expertise perspective, it's about being clear what you want to do, having a real good go at planning, do, see how it works, and then assess and keep repeating that. Some data is always really, really helpful, just to give a general sense, not just about what's happening today, but what the trends have been over time, how we work together around an improvement huddle. And it's great to see so many of those now really well established, up and running across the hospital, and how well we actually kept some of those going for James's benefit during COVID when we were doing it virtually and through Teams. So real commitment there. And this is a great way just to check in with each other around that alignment between team health and service improvement. Really important for our cultural work around creating a psychologically safe and curious way of working. So if we move on to the next slide, thank you. So this is our plan for today. I think we've got still all 4 areas. I think Neil's or a colleague's going to cover the discharge lounge today. So a lot to listen into. Do put your comments in the chat box and your feedback. And if we can, in between, we'll just have a few little comments as we try to keep the standard work and getting through some of these great reports in the time that we've got. So I think I'm handing over to Alex, talking about acute stroke unit and MDT improvement. Alex, welcome. Really looking forward to this. Over to you.
Thanks, Anne. Thank you very much. I'll go to the next slide, please. So a little bit of background. The stroke service is expanding. Now, we've got loads of treatments for stroke now, which are fantastic. We're doing more interventional procedures like mechanical thrombectomy, and we're able to do that for patients across the peninsula, so getting patients across from the neighbouring hospitals for the treatment. Now, Merivale is our stroke unit. It's an admitting unit, and as you can imagine, there's a real mix of turnover patients on that ward. So we've got some patients who have come from other hospitals who will be repatriated quickly. We've got some patients who have very mild strokes or TIAs who need very little in terms of rehab. And then unfortunately, you get some patients who are very severely affected by strokes, who have, well, are medically very complicated and have lots and lots of rehab needs as well. Now, we've got the benefit of a massive MDT. It's lots of different doctors of different seniority, nurses of different seniority, physios, OTs, speech and language therapists, discharge coordinators, all as a minimum. And it's an absolutely fantastic resource, and it's great that we can get all of these people together once a day. And what we want to do is look at how we can optimize the use of this great resource. If we go to the next slide, please. So what we thought we'd look at was looking at our current ASU MDT process and identifying areas that could be made better, improving the quality of the handover between our teams on Merivale, the way that that is communicated to the patients and the relatives as well. As some of you may be aware, our rehab unit has moved from Mount Gold to Ernie Settle, so we really were looking to improve our links with the moved rehab unit. The MDT is also really very helpful as a safety measure in terms of flagging up any big concerns for the patients and having all the right people there to address them. We thought we could probably use it as an opportunity to make a slightly more seamless process of referral to SRU as well. And with that, looking at the thrombectomy pathway, particularly looking at the way that patients are repatriated, improving our early discharge flow from the ward, and also being aware that there are patients on the ward, there are patients in the hospital elsewhere who aren't on the stroke unit who have had strokes. So in terms of identifying those patients and what their needs are and how we can best address those. Next slide, please. So a little bit of feedback that we had. So fortunately, before it, people felt that the MDT was useful and important, and that people feel that they can, they can raise issues and they can express themselves in the MDT. A couple of issues where probably we could improve was in terms of identifying actions, owners of those actions, and reviewing that they've been done. And a couple of other comments in the feedback in terms of sometimes maybe it's dominated by medical conversation and medical handover, and possibly that the chairing could be a little bit stronger as well. If we go to the next slide, please. And one more. Lovely. So some of the purposes that we identified of our MDT. So we thought really as a daily meeting, it should be focused on patient flow. I think at times there's temptation for it to become a little bit about rehab as well, but that's probably beyond the scope of what can be achieved on a daily basis. So it's about identifying early barriers and early issues and preemptively, so that they can be flagged and addressed. And also it's really an integrated meeting for the whole stroke team. So not just our acute stroke unit, but also the links into ESD and the SRU. Again, acknowledging that it's important, it's an important patient safety meeting as well, with lots of useful information that's generated for the clinical staff. And another thing, a lot of work goes into the MDT. There's a huge amount of clinical information, and before this, there was none of this that was actually recorded and documented in the patient's notes. So that in terms of getting this formally minuted as such, and it forming part of the ward round entry. So a few things we thought: identifying a clear chair, developing clear roles and responsibilities for all people in the MDT, and trying to get a more active role for all people in the meeting. Probably being a little bit better with the tech that we're using, the tech that's available. Clear actions and owners for the MDT, and clearly identifying any barriers to flow, communicating all of that to the patients and their relatives, streamlining the MDT process, really trying to make it as efficient as possible, and also considering the outlying stroke patients and how their needs are addressed. Next slide, please. So what we now have is a fully digital MDT. So obviously there's still attendance in person, but it's broadcast on Teams. We have CARE, CPL open, and we're using that real-time data. And the key patient actions and delays are recorded on the CPL record. And as you can see, we now have a nice big screen, which is fantastic. So we can access all the blood results on ICM scans on PACS, the drug record on EPMA. And it is very useful, I think, from a stroke team point of view, being able to see patient scans, for example. What we've managed to do is get rid of our horrible whiteboards, and instead we're doing it all digitally. It really is a standardized process now that's probably easier to chair, easier to navigate, and now CPL is being used by everyone. So at least if you know where you want to look for information, you know where to find it. Next slide, please. So it's early days, obviously, in terms of what we've achieved. Well, pre-midday discharges are up by 8%, and our discharge lounge usage up by 15%. It's something that we've actively thought to consider every day. Can this patient go to the discharge lounge, for example? There's still a couple of extra issues that we that we would still like to address. Next slide, please. Looking at the SRU referral and transfer. So I think, as we say, we wanted to improve our communication. I think it's also a case of knowing what the bed capacity is on SRU. So I think in the past, you send off a paper form and you don't really know where people are on that waiting list. So, removing that manual process and making it digital. And what you can see here is that we now have a kind of rehab status for each patient, which gives us a very clear idea of where they are on their rehab journey and how long they've been waiting for that. Next slide. And lastly, in terms of our thrombectomy repatriation, so we are the agreement across the region is that the stroke patients coming for mechanical thrombectomy should be repatriated 24 hours post procedure, and that's something that's really not happening at the moment. Now, part of that is to do with bed availability in other trusts, but I think another part of it is maybe we haven't had the best systems for identifying these patients and enacting that. So what we're looking to develop now is an automated, centralized repatriation list for these acute transfer patients in the trust. So once they're in hospital for more than 24 hours, it flags up an alert that they're outside of that window, and then also that flags up to a centralized team to manage the discharge and the transfer process. So one of the barriers sometimes as a clinician is feeling that you have to chase all of these things up yourself. So that really should be encouraged, should be helpful. So that's all I have on that. So I'll really welcome any questions or comments.
Wow, well done. Anne, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you, Alex. Thank you. That was brilliant. And I'm always amazed how much information we can get on one slide. So I know that we'll make all of these slides available. I've put a few comments in the chat box, really, just to say that I thought the focus on the right care at the right time, right place, including repatriation and the use of digital is brilliant. Just briefly, how's this affected the morale and the sense of teamwork on the MDT?
Yeah, I think it has. I mean, I think that part of the issues we had before was a feeling of there not being enough information available in the MDT to really make it feel as useful as it could, and that really affects the efficiency as well. So if you imagine that's the way you're starting your day, you really want it to start in a way that you feel is productive. So I think it has, and I think again everyone kind of having a clear idea of what their roles are and that things will be identified and done. I think it has helped.
That's great, thank you. Perhaps I can put James on the spot. So James from the national team, have you got any comments or questions you'd like to ask Alex?
I was just chatting on in, and thanks very much. First thing I just want to say is until about a year ago, I used to sit in meetings like this a lot in my capacity at the Royal Free, which was doing similar things, a multi-year journey to embed the management of quality as the norm for operations. And sometimes in a national role, you can feel a little bit detached from this sort of thing. And so I'm really grateful to you having me here, because it's a fuel for me. And these stories matter. And there's a chap called Tim Ferriss who's just become my boss's boss. And he's bringing together digital and improvement and transformation. And it's stories like this, Alex, that make it real. Anne was asking about the people dimension, and I'm convinced that if there's one thing that runs through all good improvement work, it's that it makes life better for staff as well. And we don't speak of that enough. We don't quantify it, we don't describe it. But if you look at the challenges of any health system, that's hugely important. But I was just wondering on the digital, Alex, yeah, there's all sorts of benefits. You talked about the patient safety benefits, and you also alluded to the frustration and time benefits. I just wondered if you've tried to tot up the amount of time that you're saving.
Well, I suppose the issue is also about how familiar you are with the tech, because obviously when you first start, it's probably negative, that I think,
Yeah.
because it's so long to get things warmed up. But I think it's a lot less duplication. I think that's one of the real improvements, having everything in one place that can, that essentially can form part of the patient's record. In terms of time, I don't know specifically in terms of the time of the meeting. I don't think it's been going on long enough to be able to tell in that regard. Obviously, one of the things that we're going to be looking at as well is the length of stay for some of these patients. So, alluded to some of the data that we had on, using the discharge lounge. So that obviously each time we use that, it's several hours per patient. So I probably can't give you an absolute.
I think Ryan might be able to help you there, Alex. So Ryan's on the call as well, and he's got his hand up. So just briefly, Ryan, and then I'm going to, I'm afraid, move us on to our next presentation. So we've got a lot to do in the time we've got. Ryan.
Thank you. And I'll just quickly jump in there. So one of the things that we are measuring as a result of some of the changes that we've made is the total time it takes for the MDT to happen each day. Alex won't know this because it's very sort of fresh news, if you like, but the time of the MDT process is starting to come down, which is actually quite good. And it is very hard to capture and show in data. But I think that one of the absolute benefits of using the digital system is it's a much better way of sharing information between staff groups. And I can tell you from being in the MDT at Maryvale for the last couple of weeks, it really does feel like that information, all the different staff groups knowing exactly what's happening with each and every patient does feel improved. And I know some of the comments that we've had back from the MDT supports that fact as well. So the MDT is coming down in time, and some of the other data measures that we're getting from the team is improving. So all good, I think.
That's great, Ryan. Thank you. And of course, the more we do electronically, the more we improve patient safety as well, rather than bits of paper flying around. So Alex and the team, thank you so much indeed. That's been really, really brilliant. Thank you. And thank you, Ryan. So can we and thank you, Ryan, for all your help on this project. It's teamwork here, absolutely. So we're going to move on now to the discharge lounge. I'm not sure who's going to lead that at the moment. Who's going to take that on? Richard, please.
So Steph Morgan's going to talk to these slides.
Thank you. Fantastic.
Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. I am Steph Morgan. I am one of the specialist improvement practice coaches. Unfortunately, Kellyanne, who's a senior assistant in the discharge lounge, has been working clinically today, so she's unable to present. So I'm just going to present on her behalf. So if there are any questions that you have, if you pop them in the chat, and I will endeavour to get Kellyanne to get back to you or one of the other team if I don't know the answer. So the early flow of patients through the hospital is something that we're really focusing on, especially with the current pressures on capacity within the trust and within the health system as a whole. One of the things that they have been looking at is that we weren't really utilising our discharge lounge as best as we could, and it was a perfect environment for patients to be transferred on their way out of the hospital. So a piece of work was started with Kellyanne working alongside Neil Hammercock and Vicky Conabier from our QA team, and it was focusing on how we can get more patients to the discharge lounge, and the initial target was 6 by 9 o'clock in the morning. In terms of methodology and approach, the guys were using an 8-step to track the progress and keeping it focused around the patient. So as a patient, it can be quite disjointed and quite unsettling to be either kept in an ED or kept on the ward when you know that all you want to do is be at home. So it's how we focus on that and identify some barriers and obstacles that are stopping us doing that. But equally, in the same breath, to also look at the opportunities that creates for us to move things forward. Next slide, please. So the team have been working with the wider wards and developed some standard work with the assistance of Monkswell Ward, which is one of our healthcare of the elderly wards. And there has also been a focus on the use of porters and the ability of staff within the discharge lounge to pull patients to the discharge lounge first thing in the morning rather than waiting for patients to arrive. And there have been some marked improvements on that, and it is still a work in progress. This, however, has led on to a bigger piece of work and the development of a early discharge exchange standard operating procedure, which is being led by our senior nursing team alongside Kellyanne and her team in the discharge lounge. And this is basically focusing on patient safety by creating a standard protocol where patients can be transferred to the right clinical area earlier on in the day from ED on the back of an imminent discharge from the ward. There has been quite a lot of evidence to say that there is a reduced risk of a patient waiting in a clinical area as opposed to them waiting in ED for a bed. And there has been also some surveys that have shown that patients would rather wait in a ward environment than in an ED, especially when ED is extremely full. So as I said, that is early days, and that is something that the team are really focusing on, and there has been some positive strides in that, getting patients to the discharge lounge every single day ahead of 9 o'clock. The overall push will be to get them there before 8:30, but as I said, it's a work in progress, and there is still an awful lot of work going on behind the scenes to help change that and embed that process with our ward and department teams. And that's it. That's my little update. Hope that made sense.
Thank you, Steph, for stepping in at short notice.
No problem.
That's great, Steph. Thanks ever so much. And I know there's been a huge amount of work going on around the discharge lounge. And I think one of the great things is such a good example of when you do make some improvements, the context within which you work changes, and then you've got to revise that, haven't you, and think differently. So it is really continuous improvement and adaptation. Brilliant. So I'm going to go to Joe Beer, who's got a quick question, I think. Joe.
Oh, well done, Steph. This is my favourite subject, as Richard and the team will know. This is a technical question that is made linked to my lack of knowledge, but should we be SPC in the chart in the bottom left-hand corner so we can see where we've got several points of improvement?
There is some other charts that are available.
Okay.
Yeah, this is just the slides that we've got at the moment.
No, they're great slides.
Yeah, and the work is still in its infancy, so I'm sure as the days progress, there will be more data available for us to look at.
Brilliant. Thank you.
That'd be really important, wouldn't it? Because actually what we do know about the changing context is that we do make real improvements, and then we've got to be able to track those, and then some other variable changes. So I think it really helps us understand what we're responding to. And I think that's important for the team, that they really keep heart, because there's a lot of really good improvements despite some of the setbacks that I think we all just have. So great comment from Amanda. Can you just quickly summarize what difference you think this is making for our patients?
I think in its essence, it's reassuring the patients that they will be looked after in the right place for the condition that they've come to see us about. I think they trust us as a healthcare provider, and I think being in the right place at the right time, getting the right treatment by the right staff, that's what we want to see for all our patients, and that's what the patients want to see equally.
I think that's brilliant. And I think James put in the chat box a bit earlier, actually, just as we kicked off this session, that he really likes what we've called our improvement program, which is people first, not just about our patients, but also about our staff. And I really like the way the whole team actually works together to make sure that any services or improvements we're trying to make put the needs of our patients first, but also brings in the great perspectives of all of our colleagues, which is brilliant. Now, I always feel really pushed for time in these sessions because I know each presentation we could take all the time up just to ask. But if you're able to pick up any of the other questions, Steph, in the chat box, that would be brilliant. So I think we're almost just about on time. So I'm afraid I am going to move us on. And James, I know you might need to leave us in a moment. Thank you very much for joining us. Do feel free to stay or leave when you're ready. Did you want to just come in, or are you going to put something in the chat box?
Well, I was just going to say I'm all good until or unless the phone rings or otherwise there's a ping.
Good.
So I'm staying as long as I can.
If you disappear, we know that you'll be doing that. Great. So I think we're now going to move on to a haematology huddle. And welcome to Sharon.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me. Yes, I work for Derriford Combined Laboratories in haematology, and I am the haematology section lead. If we could have the next slide, please. We were very fortunate to have the service improvement team with us, and they started with us in May. And they helped us improve what we were already having with regards our huddles. And we were already having huddles, but they weren't very structured, and they were nowhere near as successful as what they have been today. In haematology, we comprise haematology, coagulation, and blood bank. We have 14 biomedical scientists, and we have 2 trainee biomedical scientists, and we have support staff made up of ATOs and associate practitioners. We decided the huddle was important to improve staff morale, making them feel appreciated, valued, and listened to. We wanted to work together to overcome previous unstable haematology solution. And we were also aware that immunology had had success from their huddles as well. We've been running the huddles now since about June, which has been 4 months, and I can safely say it has been successful. We were, as I've mentioned before, we were already having a huddle, but it wasn't very well structured, whereas this one is structured. There was extra work involved in getting the huddle up and running, but we have seen the benefits starting to show by doing that. And the staff are also feeling like they have a voice and being valued. There is consistency throughout DCL, and blood bank is actually starting to have their huddle as well, and other sections are moving forward on this huddle as well. We do have barriers that we're trying to resolve with our basic resources due to the added work imposed due to a UCAS accreditation. We do have a lack of support staff and state registered staff, which is ongoing, and we do have a lack of good leadership and support. Next slide, please. The first obstacle we had on starting these new huddles was the board. Where were we going to hang a huddle board? One thing we do suffer from in the laboratory is lack of space. And this board had to be strategically placed so that we could gather around it. But we got over that hurdle, and we have found somewhere now, which has proven to be beneficial. We also like to have, we have an aim, our team purpose, of which we say every day at the beginning of the huddle. And we also have introductions as well. So if there's any new staff or anybody new within the department, we always introduce them. And that, I feel, has been a big bonus. What is really helped is the visual metrics for displaying turnaround times and analyzer critical errors. We have had problematic analyzers, and by actually displaying metrics every day and discussing them has made the staff feel like they have a voice and ways of moving forward on to improve that as well. We also look at the daily staffing that we have on that day. We look at analyzer downtime. We look at quality and safety issues as well. Team suggestions have really given the staff a voice. They've really come to the forefront in this, and we've really managed to keep on track of these staff suggestions, and we've managed to implement some of those as well, quite a few actually. We've had updates on improvement works. We've also got a forum for raising concerns, which brings about discussion on how to resolve the problem within the team. That's very beneficial. And we also discuss what went well every day. We also like to say what actually did go well, and that's really helping. My biggest feeling on this is the team health. I think that has really brought the team together. About once a week, we encourage conversation around values of which the team have selected themselves. And initially, when we were first discussing about bringing up team health, I didn't quite know if how well that would be received, but it has been received really well, and we're now looking forward to actually doing 2 a week instead of 1 a week on team health. And the team are really keen on moving that forward as well. Next slide, please. This is an example of a suggestion that we have actually implemented due to the huddles. And basically, it's looking at the staff that we have on a daily basis, putting the staff or placing the staff in different areas so as they can actually be trained if necessary and get their competencies signed off as well. This is actually really proven very successful, and we are actually still continuing to use that. We've modified it a bit moving forward, but it's actually utilizing the day a lot more efficiently than what we were doing before. And also, I would like to highlight that 3 out of 16 suggestions has now gone to 40 out of 56. So we've really, the suggestions are really coming out. People are really feeling confident to come forward with suggestions, and also wanting to take those suggestions forward and trying to make those improvements themselves. Next slide, please. So we're still looking at the amount of samples that we get a day, which is the first graph, and how much we process before 6 o'clock in the evening. 6 o'clock in the evening is when our staffing levels go down to basically 1 BMS and 1 support staff. And that's where we were struggling most at the end of the day. And I have to say, we have actually, our target was less than 10% of full blood counts after 6 p.m. And on most days now, we actually do get below that target. If we don't, we look back to see what actually happened on that particular day and how we could improve it moving forward. So we've also looked at reception in regards to the lunchtime cover and how we could improve the booking in with reception. We've also looked at the analyzers as well. We've looked at flow, and we've also put signs on the machines, happy signs, sad signs, just to make people aware if the machines are working or they aren't. Our progress from the 23rd of the 7th and actually moving forward now, because we're now in end of September, October, and we are actually processing 90% of our samples before 6 p.m. and that continues to still be the case. We're still we're not working on open tubes anymore. We've actually finished that that progress, and that delay in processing is no longer happening. The courier drop-off times we've looked at as well, and that seems to have improved. And our iron stains we've now put a new procedure in place, and that's been validated, and an SOP is also being looked at the moment. Next slide, please. I think that might be it, actually. Oh no, that's it, I think. Yes, thank you very much. I would like to say a huge thank you to the service improvement team, who we would not have been able to have done this if we hadn't have had their support. Yeah, that's Kay, Vicky and Katie. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Sharon.
Great. Oh, Sharon, thank you so much. That's been absolutely brilliant, brilliant. And I really love the presentation. There's lots I love about this one. The presentation, the way you've really appreciated your colleagues from service improvement is great. Thank you for doing that. And I really like the discussion about every week you talk about the values to try and make, you know, your workplace psychologically safe and the need to really look at health and well-being. My question is this: do you, in terms of any additional support that you might need, is there an easy way for you to ask the trust about additional support, or do you sort of find your own solutions within the team?
The additional support is tricky because I think it's more to do with the communication barriers, I think, that we have within our department. I think they are looking into, and I think these huddles are actually helping with that. But I think with the better communication at a higher level, I think that could be improved.
Yeah, no, that's really, really helpful. Thank you. I thought that was really well put, actually, in the presentation. And somebody's actually made the comment in the chat box about how many improvements you've actually made, 40 out of 56. We often talk, I think, about marginal gains, but actually, when you put them all together, they very rapidly become seismic change, don't they? And what I really like about this is how much everyone is getting engaged. So Sharon, thank you so much. Are there any other questions for Sharon?
Yeah, and I've got a question, if you don't mind, which is how does it feel now as a team?
Lot better, yeah. I think we feel that we're actually every morning when we get together, we feel that we've got a way of working forward in the day and how to get things done in a happier, cohesive way. I think communication within the team has definitely improved, and people are feeling happier to talk about it, whereas I think before they weren't.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. James?
I know time's short, but Sharon, I just wanted to say, I think everyone who works in a people function in the NHS should hear this story. It literally does have every element, I think, that matters. And if we could do this sort of thing across every setting in the NHS, so many of our challenges would melt away.
No, I agree.
It's really that good.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
Fantastic. Couldn't agree more. And as you know, Plymouth's always keen to contribute. So James, I'm sure if you'd like the team and Sharon to come along to one of our guiding boards to share that presentation, or with the national team, we would love to do that. Fantastic. Any other urgent questions? I know there's lots, but we will need to move on, I'm afraid. And thank you. I think that's been absolutely brilliant today. Thank you. So I think we are now going to move on to Steph. And I think, Steph, you're going to talk about preceptorship. Thank you.
I am indeed. So hello again. So one of the things that we have realised, especially for me being a nurse by profession, is there's always frustrations within our workforce around people feeling the need for consistent, positive, local change. Change that really matters to them as a team, and change that matters to them as individuals, have a positive impact on their patients and their own work-life balance. We realised, myself and Gary Hallett, who is the preceptorship lead, we did reflect that there was no actual formal quality improvement element to our preceptorship here at UHP, and that it was a great opportunity for us to collaborate and really address some of the issues that we had found in our time on the wards, but equally that we were still seeing around the bazaars. And it was a chance to promote the team-driven change throughout a lot of our clinical areas, which quite often aren't the focus of improvement activity. And this is important because our people first focus is around team-driven change. And we want to go from a place where people feel that they're doing improvement as a second part of their job to, I'm just doing my job, which is the fact that they're looking after patients, they're looking after themselves, but they're also striving and moving things forward. So really creating that business as usual. And also removing some barriers that staff often perceive, that they needed permission, they needed formal permission to undertake an improvement project. So the goal was that we wanted to develop QI skills from day one of people joining the trust as newly qualified staff. So that is midwives, registered nurses, nursing associates, ODPs, really everyone that comes through our preceptorship programme, and really highlighting to them that small change can have a big impact, and then most importantly that they enjoyed it. Next slide, please. So the ask of us to our preceptees was that they identify an issue within their work area, and it didn't need to be anything really big, just a small thing that really irritates them every single day, or something that frustrates them, something that they can, if they iron that out, it would be a lot better. And encouraging them to understand what now looked like, so that they knew where they'd been and where they were getting to, and what good would it look like, so their gold standard, so they would know on their journey how far they'd travelled so far. And it's important with any journey that we recognise the obstacles that people face, and also acknowledge that we can't change them all, and we can't overcome every single obstacle, but that we can really try and eliminate them using scientific methodology and scientific thinking with a simple tool such as PDSA, to experiment their way out of problems within their clinical areas and wards and departments in the trust. And it's also given them permission to implement the outcome of their PDSA, and be supported in that by their clinical leaders. And the best part of the module as a whole is that all of the preceptees come and report out at the end of their preceptorship. So they come and share their learning, share what they've done, and feedback to their colleagues. Next slide, please. So far we're in our second year of doing this as a programme. So last year we supported 171 preceptees to go through their training and deliver quality improvement projects and report out. The feedback that we have is overwhelmingly positive. The guys feel really supported, really empowered, and being able to see a change that they have helped deliver is really value adding to our staff and our teams on the wards, especially when they're delivering these things during a pandemic, working under extreme pressure, nothing like we've experienced before. So the fact that it is helping us grow our own improvement staff and improvement ideas. So we're in our second year, as I said, so we've started our training on the 23rd of August this year, and we've already had an impact on 41 preceptees, so which is immensely positive, and we are super proud of everything they're doing. Every time I teach a session, they are so motivated, so enthusiastic, and really excited at the prospect of being able to deliver improvement, and feel like they're being trusted with that mantle of being able to deliver improvement for their patients that they're caring for, but also for the teams they're working as part of. I've just put a small selection of some of the projects that the guys delivered last year. It ranges from across the board, and these are examples from acute wards, from theatres, from intensive care, from ED. It really is such a broad brush, and we are having an impact right across the trust. And there is some surprising reactions. I think one of the ODP said, "Oh, I would never expect that I'd be asked to do this," and that was really, really positive. That they came back and said, "We've delivered this as a team. We've been supported, and we really feel like we can take this forward." And one of the joys of the report outs is that our team sit on those report outs as well as others, but we help and guide and signpost those people to different elements within the trust they may not be aware of. So I know there is a piece of work that's going on currently with one of the projects from last year around diabetes, and we've managed to link in with the diabetes team with that Precepti. So it's all really super positive. And yeah, I'm really, really proud of everything that all of the Preceptis have delivered last year, and excited at what the report outs of this year are going to hold.
Steph, that is amazing. I'm sure Anne said it, and I'll say it again, but this is my favourite time of the month to come and see this work coming together, because there's so much going on across the organisation that we don't always see. And I just want to come back to one of the things that we talked about in the middle, is that the effect on people around you and the teams that you work within through this type of work is immeasurable, and we don't really measure it. But I think we've got to hold that very dear, because this is absolutely a people-centered program, and it's just lovely to see work progress. So I just want to say thank you to everybody who's presented today. It's really heartening, and I know Anne and I have got our version of our big wall after this, so I'm just hoping we do as good a job as you do. And James, thanks for coming down. Sorry I didn't make the dinner date, but thank you very much. And,
no, that's all right. You've got a very high bar for your next meeting, I think.
I know, that's what worries me, but we'll catch up, I promise. But it's great to have you down, and as Anne said, we're willing to share anything, because we're really proud of this journey. We're proud of the people that are growing through it as well. So once again, congratulations. Thanks, Richard and team, for supporting everything today. And we'll share as far and wide as we can. But
Brian,
brilliant.
is there one more slide to just run through? It's just, if you don't mind me, just to shout out before Anne has the last word. So just a reminder, everybody, and there's two points I wanted to make. A couple of months ago, we had Northwest Ambulance Service join us and share their ambulance handover work, and we subsequently had a bit of help with them. Since then, they've gone on to win a HSJ award on the back of that work, by the way. So I think they're sending, Joy sent her thanks to us for helping that, but also them helping us. And we've also got an inquiry from Guy's and St Thomas and Imperial to join our report out. So I'll let Anne and Mark and their people know the contacts that will be joining in before they join in on the day. But just a headline, really, we've got 5 brilliant report outs due in about 3 weeks' time. 3 of them have got a big cancer focus around the histology improvements, our lung improvements, and the MDT work. And just the headlines is, we're now having to book ahead on our report out. So we might have to do an impromptu extra report out at the end of October, because if we're not careful, we're going to fill up the slot. So we do try and get them into the hour. So generally we can pack 6 in if we really want to, but it's a great problem to have. So there's lots more coming, and I'll just hand back to Anne to round us up. So well done, everybody.
Yeah, that was brilliant. And just to echo Mark's conclusions, really, this is really motivational, isn't it? And just such a fantastic range of things that are going on. It really will be brilliant. And I really hope we get the chance to showcase all of this to the CQC when they come in October. So can I just thank everybody, because I think this really does show what incredible work is going on across team development and service improvement. I feel really, really proud of all of you, and you should feel really proud of yourselves, and what a great place Derriford is. Absolutely brilliant. And James, thank you for spending time with us today, and I think you will go to the national team and colleagues, and hopefully what we say nationally is now sort of brought to life for you, because you've heard it firsthand. So
very much so. And I mean, had I had to go at the half hour to a rather unpleasant, tedious conversation, believe me, I would have really missed out. So I mean, seriously, this is the stuff of the NHS, and you're in the vanguard, and if you can keep on doing this, if you can take others with you, then that's a service to the whole country.
What a great way to end. James, thank you very much indeed. Thanks everyone. Have a fabulous day, great week. See you all again soon. Thank you. Thanks team.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.